So recently, all I hear about is how things are overrated. And then people bring up, well, what's properly rated? Is anything actually properly rated anymore, including the overtime drive? Welcome on into the show. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson. We are jam-packed on Monday, March 3rd, 2025. Your number one content for all things SEC. Panic meters alive in the world of college football. Which teams are under the most pressure to succeed going into this upcoming fall? Who is the most improved quarterback of the college football season in the SEC? And we got a fun hypothetical tonight. But real quickly, make sure that you like the video, hit subscribe, and of course, follow us on all of our social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mach 10 Sports, me and Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is always fueled by FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. It's really simple. Like the video. Make sure you go on over to FanDuel.com, play down $5. Win that bet, $150 in bonus bets. Sign up today at FanDuel.com/SECU. Shumate, what's up, buddy?
Bear, it's an honor to be with you again on Monday, our third episode of the Overtime Drive. So I appreciate everybody joining us. Like Bear said, we got a fun episode again. This time of year. And we did officially, though. We started some spring ball today, and we were going to go around the SEC with that to start that off. But it's hypothetical season, Bear, so you're right. We got a good, fun hypothetical to end the segment. We got some college basketball to talk about. Overall, though, fired up, man. It's an interesting time. I think in 2 weeks is one of the more underrated weeks, in my opinion. You got the SEC tournament. You got first weekend of conference play for college baseball in general, but specifically the SEC too for us with Harrison and Chris getting you into that. So I think we're in a good, exciting time. Spring ball is here. And it's also a couple weeks away for some other teams. So
yeah, Kentucky's already underway. We got Alabama back underway. Auburn, I think, is starting this week. So we're going to have
Auburn's got 3 more weeks.
3 more weeks. Somebody else starting this week. I don't know who it is off the top of my head, but we are going to have a ton of content for you. So this is why, of course, you should be subscribed to the channel because we're not going to miss a single bit of college football content. As we already said, panic meter for every SEC team, who is the most improved quarterback by the end of the 2025 season, and much, much more. But Dave, as we always like to begin the show around the SEC, what's been going on since the last time we spoke in the conference that just means more?
Starting off on the football field, we briefly talked about it. Alabama getting out on the practice field today. Saw some different things. A lot of guys going to be out in this 15-day period. David DeBoer's out, Damani Jackson, Deontay Lawson, Danny Lewis, Keon Sabb, Justin Jefferson, Caden Proctor, James Smith. Most of those guys will miss spring. Again, you saw Caleb DeBoer just last week say they were going to do something for A-Day, but they weren't really exactly sure. I mean, it's wild to say now, Bear, with these spring games. We talked about, I'm not going in depth on spring games, but I was thinking about it earlier. When you see everybody kind of moving away from it, it's like it was only 2007 where people were packing spring games for 90,000 seats. Hell, I remember they were lining up, like some older people too may remember this in the chat, like Alan Jack. They had every SEC team had a country music act. I think a Kid Rock was in Baton Rouge. Alabama was supposed to have like Alan Jackson. Naturally, Tennessee was supposed to have Kenny Chesney for like spring games and stuff. Now it's like it's funny, man. Just I shouldn't say no one cares. It's just it's also broadcasted now. And we talked about it last week. Not trying to go down another rabbit hole. That it's just interesting.
Well, just taking a break. It's no longer the primary thing that needs to be discussed about in the world of college football. You can go ahead and have a good overall offseason without having people go watch the spring games. Now,
let's be honest, too, Bear. Now you can see the team a lot more because, I mean, every game's broadcasted. And now your spring game's broadcasted. So why would you leave, again, even from the fan experience? So, no,
I still would go to it if I was living nearby because I enjoy going to free stuff, watching college football. But I get it. The average viewer on a Saturday, you may have other things going on. But here's the thing. When you go to a spring game at some schools, if you're lucky, you also get college baseball. So make a day out of it. Go to the spring game early on, leave in the third quarter or around whatever would be quote-unquote halftime. Go catch a baseball game, enjoy the content. What else we got, Dave?
You got Alabama starting spring today. Interesting.
Keelan Russell looked good on that one clip that was firing around Twitter.
What'd you say?
Keelan Russell was looking good in that one clip that was viral around Twitter.
Yeah, a little flick of
one throw, and it was just like, yep, that's QB1. Gotta be locked in with that dude.
LSU's defensive line search going on. Looks like they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board again. They may expect that. Gerald Chapman gonna stay at Florida. Then Austin Thomas making a run at one of his former co-workers at Ole Miss, Randall Joyner, but they're both expected to stay at their respective schools. So LSU is going to have to come back to that perspective. Again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just I think some people are getting themselves some raises in some interesting spots. Neil Brown moving to Texas.
Yeah.
Going to go be an analyst for Steve Sarkisian and the boys. Sarkisian taking a page out of Nick Saban's book, bringing some of those former head coaches in, a little rehab center there. I mean, I think he should be able to add some good ideas from an offensive philosophy standpoint.
Is he going to be one of those dudes that we see like a year from now take a job at Jacksonville State or something like that? Like just a small school, took a year to kind of reassess himself before he got back in the game? Or is he going to have to become an offensive
It wouldn't shock me so if they hired him back at Troy if it doesn't work out again. Because what's Troy's coach's name? They hired him from Notre Dame.
Gerard,
they weren't great this year.
No, Troy took a step back, major step back.
Yeah, so maybe if they struggled again, or maybe the next year they'd bring him back. But again, like you said, Neil Brown wasn't great at West Virginia, but it wasn't terrible either. Like they
got the 9 wins, and then a year later was fired. Like that to me is where it's like, okay, I get it. There was a lot of things that didn't go your way. Definitely was underwhelming compared to what we believe West Virginia can be. But I do like the move for Texas. Just another offensive mind inside the building for a quarterback like Arch Manning, who has some mobility to his game. And what is Neil Brown's last quarterback working with? Mobility and Garrett Green. So you got to appreciate that.
Yeah, good offensive mind. I think it's a good hire. And then Paul Feinbaum today talking a little. I don't even know how much really basketball Paul watches, but I just thought interesting comment. He essentially paraphrasing here. He thinks. I'll quote it. Ultimately, it's really going to be important to see where the SEC schools go down the road. If you're starting a bunch of first-round knockouts, second-round exits, that becomes a lesser issue. What's critical for the SEC is in the Final Four, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say I really think it's incumbent the SEC to win it all. See, I don't necessarily – he goes into the last time the SEC's won it all in basketball, 2012, Kentucky, Anthony Davis, and them. I don't necessarily agree with that. I agree with the first round exits, you don't want to have. The SEC didn't have a great first weekend last year, but I don't know if you got to win it all. I mean, that's a tough ask in a single elimination tournament. I don't know. I think that's got a little. You would like to get a Final Four team for sure. That would be disappointing if no one from the league made the Final Four. I would say that, but to win it all, to put that kind of expectation on somebody, again, Auburn's done that to themselves a little bit, which is good. But
you have 13 teams. You should have at least one go to the conference Final Four. You should. Like one team should be.
Yeah, if the SEC team doesn't make the Final Four, I would agree. That's disappointing. Auburn clinching, for the people who missed it, even living under a rock, clinched the SEC 2025 regular season title with the win at Rupp on Saturday, and then Alabama's loss on the road to Tennessee essentially gave Auburn, it gave Auburn the outright title. It's still going to be a long shot for Bama. Still got other teams. I think you got 10 SEC teams locked in, folks. Kind of waiting on Georgia and Arkansas. And I think that's kind of it to see if we get, and I think one of them get in. And that'll be it from the SEC. Last week of the regular season, conference tournament next week, and then Selection Sunday, less than 2 weeks.
What's the most exciting game that you're looking forward to this week?
Oh, it's got to be Florida at Bama. I think that's losers out of the 1 seed conversation. I think you got one, in my opinion, unless Houston loses to Kansas tonight, which I don't think they will. And then you got 3 of the 1 seeds taken. There's one more. I think you got Auburn, Duke. They're going to give Houston one, as they should. They had a dominant year in the Big 12, second best conference. And I think that final one's going to come down to Bama, Tennessee, and Florida. I think loser of Bama, Florida is out. I mean, there will be a locked into a 2 seed. But no, I mean – yeah, I mean, it is wild, the SEC this year. I mean, you're right. I think a team's got to get to a Final Four. It would be disappointing. If, the conference had no I'd be a little shocked, honestly.
8 teams in the SEC this week are currently ranked, starting off with, of course, number 1 being Auburn, number 4, Tennessee, number 5, Florida, number 7, Alabama, number 15, Missouri, number 19, Kentucky, number 22, Texas A&M, and number 25, Mississippi State. The fact that we have seen such a drop-off from Texas A&M, just literally 2 weeks ago, they were the number 7 team in the country. Now they're fighting to stay ranked going into the end of the year. That says a lot. And A&M is not going to have the most easiest pathway to, I think, guarantee their spot. Now, they're going to be in the postseason. But, I mean, we're talking about a team that at one point was flirting with a 2 or 3 seed. What are they now, Dave? We're talking like a 6 seed, maybe even a 7 seed. That could really hurt their pathway to represent the SEC in San Antonio.
Who said, how do you cut out for that last
Texas A&M.
What do I think about them?
Where are they going to drop?
They dropped 4 in a row now. They get Auburn tomorrow. It's probably as good as a spot as you could get Auburn to get in right now. I think they may rest a couple of guys. They got everything clinched. So A&M's trying to get this monkey off their back. But I still like the core of this team. A lot of guys that had played a lot of meaningful basketball in Buzz Williams' system. I could see this team a little higher on them a couple of weeks ago. I could definitely see this team getting to the second weekend, certainly, just because of the way they play and the competition they played this year. I like Missouri overall, though, from a tournament team. If you told me outside of the kind of 3 to 4 obvious, Auburn, Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee didn't make it. And again, I'm one. Tennessee fans aren't happy in my power rankings today. Still had Alabama at 3, Tennessee at 4. I just think Alabama's a better overall team than Tennessee. A buzzer beater loss on the road.
By the way, I'm still pissed about that game. I am. The fact that you have a 5-second violation and you can't get the ball off, and then immediately it's a game buzzer beater. That's frustrating if you're an Alabama fan. That's so frustrating, and it's demoralizing a little bit, especially because you had it.
One of the tougher regular season losses I can remember Alabama having in quite a while. But no, I mean, the SEC set up good. I think we're really just trying to figure out who are these final 1 seeds going to and how does kind of the 6th through 10th spots in the league shake out. It should be fun, man.
12 teams that are currently ranked in D1 baseball's top 25, with LSU now taking over for Texas A&M as the new number 1 seed. Tennessee, Arkansas, Georgia round out the top 5. Florida rounds out the top 10. Texas and Oklahoma jump up to 12 and 13. A&M tumbles all the way down to 14. Ole Miss, one of the surprising teams in baseball early on this year, at number 17. Vanderbilt at 18. Auburn comes in at number 22. And Alabama, who you're still considering to be the most disrespected team in college baseball right now, they come in at number 23.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of interesting. I see our guy Harrison has A&M way back there. It's always interesting. And again, power rankings are always interesting because I feel like it's just defined by who's doing it, as it should. It's their rankings. But it's always like, do you go with who the better team is in like a neutral kind of field setting, and that's who you think would win? I know some people do that, and some people do what's and then you kind of have teams that kind of – it's like what you do in the field, but it's so early to go off that. So, no, it'll be interesting. I mean, again, SEC baseball, 2 weeks will be phenomenal.
LSU jumping up to number 1 isn't surprising with the way that they've looked. Tennessee's looked awesome, I think, offensively. They also have one of the top pitching staffs in baseball. And then Florida still being ranked inside the top 10. I have no doubt about that. All right, Dave, let's move on over to the panic meter for 2025. Here's the deal. Every team in college football is looking to make the postseason. Every team is trying to make the dozen dance. Not every team is going to. But some teams can afford to have a down year or a year that was less than stellar of what were the preseason expectations. Other teams, if they start to struggle, there may be change. And change is probably inevitable at multiple schools in the SEC after no one got fired last year. So here's what we're going to do. Alphabetical order. Panic mode for every team. Number 1, ice cold. Number 2, you're probably safe. Number 3, let's talk after the season. Number 4, okay, you're starting to feel a little bit of pressure. Number 5, win or get out, because we don't have time to go ahead and sit back idly while you fix the program once again. Let's start off with Alabama. They come in after 9-4, bring in Ryan Grubb, really good transfer portal class, top 3 recruiting class. What do you think is the panic meter for the Crimson Tide in year 2 underneath Kalen DeBoer?
I'm going to go with 3, Bear. I think it's a 3. I don't think it's some like real warm. Again, will it in 2026? Hold on, I'm pulling up our scale. All right, here we go. So by 3, yeah, you got to show improvements. Obviously, then you got to show the improvements in the little things. Honestly, in them, that's where Alabama fans are accustomed to. Nick Saban only lost to one unranked team one time in Tuscaloosa. So you have a whole generation of new Alabama fans that don't really know how to handle losing to a team that's lesser than you on paper. So but that's a reality for most programs. It's kind of just a compliment to where Nick Saban had the Alabama program. 3, got to show improvements. It's not as hot as people are saying. They're going to give him a chance. It's Greg Burns' guy. Greg Burns always believes in patience, even with all his coaches. I think they're fine. I think it is playoffs, though. It's a 1-win improvement.
I think it's a 3 for a different reason. It was a 2 for me before the Ryan Grubb hire. Now you bring in the guy that was the kind of Robin to your Batman wherever you were at Fresno State. And then when you were at Washington, you had back-to-back 11-win seasons. He's now there. He's calling the shots. He's running the show. Now, your attentiveness can be only on building this identity of the Alabama football that is sustainable well into a 14-team, a 16-team playoff. Because it's Alabama. I don't care what anybody says. The expectations will always be, if you don't make the playoffs in a 16-team model, you're doing something wrong and you should be feeling the pressure. Their schedule's manageable. I mean, yes, the Iron Bowl's away this year, but you get LSU at home. You get Oklahoma at home. You get Tennessee at home. You get Vanderbilt at home. You got to go to Georgia. That's probably a scare. You got to go to Florida State, Who knows what they are? You got to go to South Carolina. Who knows what they are?
Wisconsin.
But you welcome Wisconsin. Okay, I'm like right now. Wisconsin's the most overrated team right now in the Big Ten for my money.
I don't think they're overrated because no one rates them very high. But I'm saying like it's a lot better. Let's put it this way, Cole. It's a lot better than most people's second non-conference game. I mean, if you go at Florida State and Wisconsin, I mean that's tougher than most teams' conference slate or non-conference slate.
But I like what they have on the offensive line returning. I like what they have in the running back room. I like a lot of the recruits that they brought in. There's a lot of early enrollees that should be caught up to speed for week one when they travel to Tallahassee. It's a team that I think should have expectations of 12-0, but settle for 10-2. That's the way I feel. It's a 3 because you bring in your ace in the hole with Ryan Grubb. Your schedule's manageable. I don't think that it should be that more challenging. Let's move on over to Arkansas. I'll go first. 5. Plain and simple. I think until we see an actual change at the helm, it's always going to be a 5 for Sam Pittman. You lost a lot in the transfer portal. You lost multiple stars in the offensive line. You lost your star wide receiver, Andrew Armstrong, to the NFL draft. Luke Haas, who was supposed to be a blanket and security across the middle of the field, is now at Ole Miss. Your secondary lost multiple pieces. I think that you're going to see Taylon Green take another step forward. Love the addition of Omega Blake. I think he's a really talented vertical receiver. Like that you were able to keep Braylon Russell in your backfield. And I do think that Bobby Petrino, another year working alongside with Taylon Green, a quarterback that he handpicked, going to be awesome. But it just feels like every single year when the SEC gods are coming out with their schedule, they look at Arkansas and go, let's pig roast them. Because it's never easy. They always have 3 or 4 road games that are nightmare. They get an upset win. They're going to get an upset win. But at some point, we got to figure out, what is this team moving forward? Are they 6-6? Are they 8-4 with the potential to finish with a 9th win in a bowl game? Are they 4-8? Because I don't really know what the trajectory is of Auburn right now. There's just so much that I want to believe in, but I need to see more of it. And honestly, what I'm seeing right now, or what I'm hearing about what is currently gone, it's unfavorable. It's unfavorable, to say the least.
You talking about for Arkansas?
For Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4. I don't know how much the administration honestly really wants to get rid of Sam Pittman. So I don't think it's as hot as people think. I think if he gets 6 wins, he's back. I think Hunter Yurchik is trying to leave. If we really want to be completely honest, they're cutting back. They're only going to be spending about $14 million compared to what other people are spending. Yeah, I think it's a 4. I think it's his hire. He doesn't want to get rid of Sam Pittman. And again, I think with the way it is in today's athletics, he wants to win big in basketball. There's pressure on them to win big in basketball. I think it's 6-7 wins. Sam Pittman is back next year. If he wins 6 or 7 games, he will be back next year. He will not get fired because I do not think. Now, he may retire, but I don't think it's going to be a fire. I don't think they're going to fire him. I don't think they want to. And I don't think they want to pay people or pay a full coaching staff buyouts because they want to give a lot of money to that. I mean, they want to be big basketball.
Is it frustrating that I have more angst and more dismay towards the athletic staff than really most people that work inside of Fayetteville, that they're content with 6-6?
There's frustration internally there with that.
Because I have no allegiance to Arkansas. People think that I hate Arkansas. They think that I just am the biggest Arkansas griper that has ever existed because I don't give them their flowers where it's due. But here I am screaming into a microphone. I think Arkansas should be competitive. Arkansas should put together decent recruiting classes. They should feel like a team that at least is making some strides in the transfer portal. And it feels like instead they're starting to become like a minor league team where people are picking up their pieces and then turning them in to future NFL talent. It's like every offseason, I just get so frustrated with Arkansas. And here's the worst part, Dave. There's going to come a moment where Arkansas no longer is viewed as a decent job in college football to where you won't be able to land a solidified head coach. And you're going to have to start going into that pathway of, let's hire an offense coordinator. Let's hire a position coach. Let's hope that the Fran Brown technique works down in Fayetteville in the SEC. That's why it's just so frustrating that they're holding out for Sam Pittman still.
Yeah, I just think they have priorities differently in an administration standpoint.
What about Auburn?
I'm going to go 5. I think you got to win. I think they got to win 8 games. And I kind of lean they will. I think they'll be one of the more improved teams in the league. Again, it's not going to be hard to replicate. I mean, they only won 5 games last year, but no, I think you got to win now. It's year 3. It wasn't that bad when you inherited it. I mean, this is a team. This is a coach, and prayers with him with his prostate diagnosis. So, I mean, prayers with Coach Freeze. But this is still a program when I'm just looking at what he's done in his job. he hadn't had a winning record. I mean, their overall losing record, they're 6-7, 5-7. Your schedule hasn't been that difficult. If I'm an Auburn booster, a big money person, it's win or go home now.
It's not to the point of where you have to be a college football playoff team. Like, I want to preface this. It's not.
No, I think it's like 8, 9 wins.
But it's a 5 because of the board and the boosters opened their wallets, wrote multiple blank checks, and said, do whatever you have to land this kid. And they got one of the best wide receivers in college football in Eric Singleton. And they got a solid quarterback and multiple backups in Jackson Arnold and Ashton Daniels and Deuce Knight, the 4-star talent. They once again are going to finish with a top 10 recruiting class. They landed some really good defensive pieces over the last 2 years. They've paid to keep DJ Durkin in Auburn instead of going to Penn State or going to other schools that are probably going to be interested in him. And their schedule is manageable. Dave, yes, they travel to Oklahoma. They travel to College Station. And that week 1 game against Baylor is no snooze fest. Sawyer Robertson's a really good player. But you get Georgia at home. You get the Iron Bowl at home. You get Missouri at home. You get Mercer. You get Kentucky at home. You get some of your more games that you would feel like could lean in favor of the opposing team in your own backyard. And it's a more veteran roster. And you feel good about your wide receiver room compared to last year. Jackson Arnold, this will be the best offensive line he's played behind. This will be the best wide receiver room he's worked with. And you're a coach that constantly is preaching about getting better day by day. All we've seen is regression. We saw regression from year 1 to year 2. We saw regression in the way that you coach. We saw regression in the offensive play design. You still are the one calling the plays now, and it didn't get any better last year. But I still think that this is a very solid team. They're a good defense. They're a strong offense. Overall, there should be no reason why 7-5 is the floor for this team. The ceiling should be 9-3. And if you can't get to that level, if we're talking 6-6 again, where it's a close call in the 4th quarter against Kentucky, or you're going to Oklahoma and Jackson Arnold's throwing 4 interceptions and you're keeping him in the game and the turnovers still become an issue, that's something to where you have to look at the identity of the program through the eyes of the coach and wonder, is this working? Because we thought it was working and we held on a little bit too long to Gus Malzahn, and we probably should have moved off him. And then we couldn't land the right guy, and now we still can't land the right guy. And we're watching Georgia and Alabama and Ole Miss and Missouri and South Carolina. They're all getting better. And here we are sitting by idly praying that things turn our way eventually.
Agree.
All right, what about Georgia? Georgia, they do a good job in the transfer portal.
It's Florida, then Georgia.
Okay, well, what about Florida? Florida, once again,
same situation as Auburn. A little bit more momentum with your quarterback in the year. You got to win, or people are going to want you out. Similar 8-9 wins there. I don't have to break down your schedule. I think it's 8-9 wins, no matter how you slice it and dice it.
I go 4 only because of I think you have the quarterback. I think if the quarterback takes that next step forward, let's say you're losing to Tennessee, that's a top 10 team on a game-winning field goal. Let's say that you're losing to Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is just trying to get revenge against you, traveling to the Oxford. What if your offensive line is banged up or bruised? Like, there's little things that I think are derailed.
Problem with the offensive line not being good again, though, dude, it's year 4. It's on you.
Sure. No,
you know what I mean?
I get it. I guess I'm wondering, like, are you still going to have decent wide receivers? Can you trust that the younger guys are going to step on up, like a Dallas Wilson coming on in? Do you have a healthy Trey Wilson? To me, it's little things like that like could derail the season. But you got Lagway. I think you're going to have a better run game with Jaden Baugh coming back this year. I like where this team is. I like where the identity of this team is. The schedule sucks. Like, an 8-win season for a team like Florida is like a 10-win season for most teams in the SEC.
Yeah, I think an underrated game to really open is that Florida-Miami game again. Very underrated. Both teams need momentum to open up that year. I mean, it kind of springboarded Miami a little bit. I think Florida kind of needs that.
I think Florida needs it just to simply say that they're still the better team in the state. Like, that's it to me at this point. That we know that you're Miami. We know that Mario's spending money, but it doesn't matter how much money you spent. We're still controlling it. Georgia, good offseason overall. I like the wide receivers they brought in. They have 2 quarterbacks that they really trust. Decent enough, I think, turnaround when it comes to what they lost versus what they brought in. And again, it's Kirby Smart. And this is now going to be his 3rd year where he hasn't won a national title. So he's itching. It'll be year 3 if they don't win it this year. So what's the pressure?
Oh, I think it's a 1. I mean, Kirby Smart could not win a national championship for 3 more years. It'd be a 1. I mean, he's really him, He is the only guy in the league right now that has the keys to the city. We had 2 of them. Now we got 1. So, no, I think Kirby Smart will be 1 till the end of time.
I think it's a 2, and the only reason I say it's a 2 is because if you – okay, let me explain. Let me explain. Let me explain. Let me explain. The Mike Bobo slander is.
Yeah, I was about to ask. Did we say Mike Bobo or did we say Kirby Smart?
No, I'm saying Georgia. But like the Mike Bobo slander is getting out of control. People are pissed off because of you thought you were going to have the best quarterback in college football last year. Thought you're going to have a solid run game. Thought you're going to have decent wide receivers. And you didn't rank inside the top 50 in any single category. And so what?
Where are you divvying this off? We're on Mike Bobo. How does this get?
Hang on.
Being on the hot seat.
So Kirby held on to him. And so I think that there's pressure for him to say, okay, well, maybe it was the quarterback. Maybe it was the inconsistency of the offensive line. We got better with wide receivers. So that it's a 2 because of, hey, we didn't really look like a national championship team. Like people picked us to win the Natty and people said, oh, well, we were still good enough to win the SEC, but we didn't feel like those other teams, the 2023 team that just was left on out, the 2022 team that won it, the 2021 team, the 2019 team, the 2018 team. And it's Georgia. Like you expect Georgia to be a constant player in the college football playoff. So it's not that I'm saying Georgia is facing like any pressure to win a national championship.
It's playoff or bust next year.
But it's like you got to make the playoffs. You're Georgia. Your schedule's manageable. You have a top 5 recruiting class. You brought in 2 really good wide receivers. I like what you have in Nate Frazier. I think your offensive line, you know, did you make the right call to hold on to Stacy for another year? Like it's those little things where it's like, okay, I'm a doubting Thomas. Let's go ahead and have somebody else prove me wrong.
Here. I'm playing producer right now, Bear. I'm bringing the bait in here. I'm saying Cole Thompson just put Kirby Smart on the hot seat.
Yep, totally put Kirby Smart on the hot seat. That's exactly what I said.
God, this is playoff or bust next year.
Well, it's Kirby though. You got to make the playoffs. Like, I'm sorry, Georgia should never be not in the playoffs. They just shouldn't. The way that their schedule is, and the way that they recruit, and the way they develop talent. Unless it's a freak injury to a quarterback and you just see Gunnar Stockton end up missing terribly if Ryan Pelusi wins the job. Like, there's no reason why Georgia shouldn't be in the playoffs with their schedule, especially with some of their games they have at home this year. Like, they get Alabama at home. Like that should be one that Kirby at least says, I feel really good. Like, it's little things like that to where I'm saying that it's a 2 and not a 1. LSU. That's definitely one that's going to have a lot of frustration.
For LSU, I'm going to go 2. Yeah, I could see somebody maybe thinking it's a little higher, but I don't know. I feel like it's going to take a lot to get rid of Brian Kelly and then to truly get rid of him. Maybe take a really bad season this year. Next year, Scott Woodward hired him. I think it's going to take a lot to get Scott out. He's like a big Louisiana politician. I don't think that's the case. I also think they're in line now. I think they got their ducks in a row. Could have been better initially when Brian Kelly got there. I think he underestimated the politics in the state with them being the only big state or big school in that state. No offense, Tulane. But I think he underestimated that. They got the guys in the right spot to make the right hires. I think they're going to go in now. Me and you talked a little off air on the phone today, Bear. I think they're hungry now to go win the boosters. I think LSU surges here in the next few years. So I'm not as down on Brian Kelly as I was heading into last season because I thought they would underachieve a little bit. But no, I think he's fine. I could see where someone thinks a 3 maybe, but I'm going to go with 2.
I have a 3.5. I have a 3.5. Because here's the thing. Because of number 1, it's another year with Garrett Nussmeier in the system. Death taxes year 2 of the LSU quarterback hitting his stride. Look at Joe Burrow. Look at Jaden Daniels. Number 2, they went out and they transferred in the right players. I love Barrion Brown for this offense. I love Nick Anderson fully healthy to pair alongside with Chris Hilton and pair alongside with Aaron Anderson. I love what they brought in at tight ends to replace Mason Taylor. Yes, the offensive line lost a lot, but still, I think that they're landing the right amount of players. They revamped the entire defense for Blake Baker this offseason. I love some of the names they brought in. I'm very high on Marcus Cooley, the DB that comes on in from NC State. I think that Patrick Payton could have a really good year. And so you add all the talent and you bring back the starting quarterback and you feel like that you in this season adding in the right pieces to your staff all should concoct into at least a college football playoff appearance. Now, I'm not saying win the national championship. If Garrett Nussmeier wins you a playoff game and now Brian Kelly can say we went to the next round and then unfortunately we met into a buzzsaw that was Oregon or Ohio State or something like that, I think LSU fans can see the trajectory that, yes, he understands the politics. Yes, he understands what the expectations are. And yes, the goal is achievable. But you can't continuously say, well, we'll get him next year. We'll get him next year. And next year never comes. Because eventually people got tired of hearing that when it came to Les Miles. And he won a national championship. And they got tired of hearing it with Ed Orgeron. And he won a national championship. And they're paying you a lot of money. And we have viewed you as such a prominent coach. Because I'm so sick and tired of the people screaming that Brian Kelly is an overrated head coach. He's not overrated. He's properly rated, given all of his resume up to this point in his college football career. But it's getting harder and harder to defend you when you lose games that you shouldn't, when you're getting blown out by Alabama in year one without Nick Saban, and other criteria that should never be an issue there. You should be able to run the football efficiently. You shouldn't be losing 4-star recruits to programs like Tennessee or to Georgia or to anywhere else. It's LSU. So, it's a 3.5 because of, I love the returning production. I love what they have brought in portal-wise. And I do think that their schedule is manageable right after that week 1 showdown in Death Valley against Clemson. I really do like all the pieces lining up for a team like LSU to go on a deep run to the playoffs. I do. I'm not ready to put them there because again, I've been fooled before by LSU. But I do think that 3.5 expectations should be 10-2 college football playoff appearance as the, at worst, 10 seed.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss. I'm going to go to Ole Miss. I'm going to go 1. I'm going to go Ole Miss for 1. Lane Kiffin's not on any kind of hot seat. I think they'll let Lane stick around as much as possible. They kind of got a good thing going. They're known as Transfer U. If he can get a kind of a stable platform, foundational quarterback like Austin Simmons, they can continue to ride this. I think fans are accepting of Lane, kind of like, hey, you know what you're getting with Lane. The dog's going to be a part of the program, but I think people, hey, we'll trade that in for some wins. So I think it is what it is. They've kind of embraced Lane Kiffin. He's kind of embraced them to some extent. 1. I'm not concerned with him. Honestly, off the top of my head, him and Kirby Smart and Sark right now are the 3 guys that you're like, I guess Bear thinks Kirby Smart. So what are you giving Lane Kiffin if Kirby Smart's a 2?
I'm giving him a 1.
Oh my God.
Okay, I've given the okay. By the way, I'm not giving coaches
than Kirby Smart.
By the way, I'm not giving coaches this. That's the difference. I'm giving programs this. That's what I'm saying. I'm giving programs these grades. Now, again, the program is the coach, but still, that's not the point. I didn't say Kirby Smart by name is facing a little bit more pressure. I said that George is facing pressure. It's a 1, and here's the reason why. They're retooling their entire offense. Don't get me wrong. You think that Austin Simmons is going to take a good step forward. I like Austin Simmons a lot. I think he's a very, very, very talented quarterback. I like some of the portal pieces they brought in. Trey Wallace from Penn State, Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest. I like the run game that they have. It's a healthy full year of Logan Diggs. I think the offensive line's going to be good. I like Luke Haas coming on in. Really good field stretcher at tight end. But if they were to go 9-3 this year, which I think is obtainable with their schedule, I would say it could happen. If they were to go 10-2 and make the playoffs, I could say it could happen. But there's no pressure for Ole Miss because I think the pressure was all last year. You had all the returning talent. You had the number 1 portal class, and you had such a relaxed schedule. And all you had to do was not shoot yourself in the foot against either Kentucky or Florida, and you're in the playoffs. So it's like, that's where my brain goes. It's like, if Ole Miss doesn't make the playoffs this year, but they find their quarterback for the next 2 seasons, that's a win. That's a win. That's the difference, I think, between right now Georgia and what the expectations are there versus what the expectations are in Oxford. And I don't think that Lane Kiffin's going anywhere anytime soon. I think he's happy there. Mississippi State.
Go, Bear.
What?
Said go.
Oh, Mississippi State. 3. And I think okay, and let me explain why it's a 3. You lost at Toledo. You lost to a MAC team.
And saying they lost was being nice.
You got killed by a MAC team. And I get it. It wasn't your players. I get it. It wasn't your identity. I love what you brought in. I think Fluff Bothwell was the 2nd best running back to join the SEC this offseason. I think they have some really good wide receivers that know what Jeff Lebby's type of veer and shoot offense is, especially with a guy like Brennan Thompson coming on in from Oklahoma. I think that Anthony Evans is going to have a decent role in some capacity, whether it's on special teams or as that gadget type player. I think that you can have a really serious quarterback conversation between Luke Kromenhoek and Blake Shapen coming on back in. You kept Coleman Hustler as your defense coordinator. You got to do or die with that one. That's a decision where it's like, I'm not saying that you can trust it. I'm not saying that you have to go ahead and believe that this is a team that needs to get to a bowl game, but like you cannot lose again to a Northern Illinois. You can't lose to Southern Miss. I know Charles Huff is a really good coach. You shouldn't be losing that game. You can't lose. You like win one SEC game. That's all I'm asking for. I don't think that that's that big of a challenge. And if you can't do that, then you're going into what feels like a critical year 3 for Jeff Lebby to prove I am the right guy. I'm a dude that understands that I need some more peace in there. But it's like, it's embarrassing. Like, it's embarrassing to say that Toledo or Northern Illinois or even a Southern Miss school is able to put up consistent points against you. They're able to win on third down. They're able to execute offensively on the ground, and you can't open field tackle because that's a preview of what you can expect in the SEC. So it's a 3 because of it's like you have no leg to stand on when it comes to, oh, it was a bad first year. No, it was a disgusting first year. UMass and FCS Eastern Kentucky don't cut it.
No, I mean, I'm with you, Bear. I would say I have a 3 too. Like last year, again, first year, you kind of give somebody the benefit of the doubt, the hall pass, whatever you want to call it. Like, but you're right. Like you lost to Toledo. Again, one of the better MAC programs. I like Jason Candle and them, but like it was 28-0 right out of the gate. This wasn't like they beat you on a 55-yard field goal as time expired. It was just like, what the hell, man? Like, I mean, they dominated you. Like, you should them. Like, you're right. You didn't win a conference game. Weren't really close in many of them. Like, you're right. Last year was a total failure. This year, I don't know if you can get to 6, man, but you need to go win a conference game. And like you said, Barry, you got to go get – I think you need to go get in that 5 range.
I think even 4 is fine if you just look competitive in those 4.
Yeah.
Like that's
well, I mean, you really need to judge Mississippi State with the eyes. Like you said, if you're just looking for a win total as a State fan, for the people that are listening, I hate to say this, but you said you're probably going to be disappointed. Like you said,
you're extremely disappointed.
You have to take it. Like, yeah, I agree with you, Bear. What is those 4 wins? What do they look like? 5? It's obviously improvement.
Missouri. Can I go first on this one? Because before I want you to
steal my thunder. You won, Barry. I mean, you should have been a Missouri Tigers.
Yeah, okay. 1. And plain and simple. Eli Drinkwitz is facing no pressure this year after having back-to-back 10-win seasons. You're replacing your star wide receivers in Theo Wease and Luther Burden. You're replacing the pride of Columbia and Brady Cook. I think the offensive line is going to be fine. I like what they've been able to replace with Membo going. I think that Kevin Coleman comes on in and is a really, really good, solid slot receiver that can elevate your team in ways for Kirby Moore's system. Ahmad Hardy comes on in from Louisiana Monroe. Dude was a stud last year, and I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's the best running back to join the conference. Still a very solid defense. It's a manageable schedule. You don't leave for Rote until October 18th, but like we're talking about Missouri now with expectations being 9 wins, 10 wins. Like that is the new aura around a place that just a few years ago was settling for 6-6. They were okay. They weren't okay, but they had to understand 5-7 is a reality. And Eli Drinkwitz now has back-to-back double-digit win seasons, and he's breaking in a new quarterback. And if Pabula ends up hitting and he looks like the part, all you got to do is say, hey, we got the quarterback in 2026. Let's build around him. Let's start spending more money in the transfer portal. Our schedule's going to be a little bit more challenging, but our quarterback feels really confident. Our defense is still really sound. We developed some really good quality young guys that are going to be back for 2026 and beyond. There are one, and honestly, Dave, this is the 4th coach that I think is not facing a single bit of pressure right now because Drink is very content. And honestly, Missouri could do a lot worse than Drink if they were to end up having to replace him in the offseason.
Yeah, I think it's 1. I mean, think about it. Just 2 years ago, his tail was on a sizzling seat. I mean, it wasn't until 2023 at his first winning season at Missouri. Now, to be fair, he inherited that team the COVID season, I do believe.
Yeah, the 2020 year.
First game there was against that 2020 Alabama team. But no, yeah, it's a 1. It's not even a discussion. So I'm not going to continue anymore. You just hit about most of it.
They could go 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, 11-1.
Yeah, I mean, even a losing record, he's back.
The program doesn't face any pressure either because of it's like, hey, back-to-back years where you finished inside the top 25 and you got pretty signature wins. Like, just beat Arkansas and beat Oklahoma and say, screw you from the Big 8, the Big 12. We're good. Like, that's how I feel about it. Who's next? Oklahoma?
Yeah, Oklahoma. I went 5. Big year.
Okay.
Love John Mateer. I think he was the best quarterback in the portal. I think they got some weapons out of there. I think Ben Arbuckle's fine. I mean, again, I think his hire's a little overblown. He doesn't really do anything else. No one else does it in today's modern offenses. I think the big key is more John Mateer than it is Ben Arbuckle. So I think they handled that. I mean, outside of that, I mean, I think it's just a must win for Brent Venables this year. Heading into year 4, you've seen some good things, seen some really bad things. Maybe you have some injury luck go your way this year. You're going to need it. Again, another tough schedule, but I think 5. I mean, they're right up there with Auburn to me.
I think it's a 5, and the reason why is because of you're banking on this quarterback to be kind of your backbone for the team. And also, I don't think that it's – what is Oklahoma going to be underneath a guy like Brent Venables? That's a big question that I have. Can you still recruit at a high-end level now joining the SEC? Can you still bring in the right amount of talent and transform it the way that you did in the Big 12? Can defense still be your calling card? And I think it will. I love their recruiting class. They brought in Fastu, the 5-star offensive tackle from Louisville. They also brought in the kid from Bridgeland, Ryan Foji. He's already signed his letter of intent. I think they're going to be better on the offensive line simply because it's another year with Bill Beatonbow calling the shots. I think that he's going to be able to develop better. Mateer understands the offense. Like people don't want to hear this, but it's just a fact in my opinion. When you already know what your offensive coordinator wants and how to run the system pretty clearly, it's like having a second coach on the field. He's going to have everybody lined up. He's going to be able to call the audibles at the line of scrimmage. And Arbuckle knows what he needs out of a quarterback. Like, I think that it's 7-5, 8-4. And I'm going to be completely real. 7-5, 8-4 is what I'm okay with. I'm content with that if I am a SEC football fan.
Yeah, it's like a great AD told me one time at Georgia. The moment you think your head coach isn't your guy, you should probably make the move. And that's where I think Joe Castiglione's at with Brent Venables. Because think about it. Oklahoma's a better program than 7-5, 8-4. And that's what we'll be talking about. And that's what we would be talking about in year 4 is being like, we're fine with that. It's kind of like.
But also their schedule it's one of the more challenging ones in the SEC. I mean, think about this for a second, Dave. Texas at South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, back to back to back to back. Then you have Alabama, Missouri, and LSU to close it out. I mean, like, it's little things like that to where it's like, it's not at the same level as Florida, for me personally, but it's right there. And also you got to throw Michigan in there. We don't know what Michigan's going to be in week 2. We don't know if Bryce Underwood's going to be playing. We don't know what we're not sure what this offense is going to look like in terms of wide receiver. But I'm just like, I think that 8-4, it's very similar to like saying, hey, it's 10-2 in most SEC schools. Like, I think that you can believe a lot, especially if material comes back for 2026. Like, you add that in, I think it's another win, personally. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, you're extending him another year, I think. Do you really think he's going to be the guy that's going to go get you in just off 8 wins alone? And I'm with you. I mean, that's realistic with this schedule. It's kind of a catch-22. It's like, man, yeah, 8-4 would be a good season, but then you take a 35,000-foot view and you're like, man, we're still very far behind everybody else in the league for this most
like
part.
It's not
maybe varies an extreme word, but like it's still like 8-4 in year 4.
But like at the same time, 8-4 in year 2 of the SEC is the way that I would view it. And also it would be a complete revamp and change of the offense. And maybe again, what if it's 8-4 and 2 of those losses are on game-winning field goals? Or they're on just your defense, unfortunately, blowing it with 20 seconds left. Like, what if it's one of those things? Like, that's where my brain's at when it comes to.
He's for sure back. I'm with you. I just don't know if he's there long-term still.
Yeah, but the panic meters are 5. That's for dang sure for Oklahoma. And
it's do or die next year.
It should be. South Carolina's up next. 9-4, solid year. You think a 1?
I think he's a 1.
No. But what about the program? Not Shane. Not Shane on the hot seat, but just the program in general.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of that's how I kind of rank mine.
Okay.
The head coach. I'm going to go 1. I mean, there's no real pressure for them next year. I mean, again, I think they replaced any realistic South Carolina fan, I think would tell me they replaced a ton on that. They have to replace a ton on that defense. You need some weapons to step up. I think 7-5 would be a very manageable year that you'd be like, all right, it was a good follow-up year after a big 9-win season. And then maybe you get some guys, some young cats to develop, and that defense is good in 2026. But I think 7-5 would not be a disappointing year next year.
I would be underwhelmed by that personally, only because of
too much on defense.
I would say, but I would be underwhelmed at that, especially if the defense you saw some of the recruits that you've been bringing in the last few years, they don't transition the way that you saw some of the other guys. Like, yes, you have Dylan Stewart and Jalen Kilgore, but your offense is now hitting its stride and your defense just can't get a stop to save its life. Like, I think 8-4 is what I would say for South Carolina.
You think it's underachieving if they go less than 8 wins?
I would say it's underachieving if they go less than 8 wins. But I'm not underachieving, but that's a 2 for me. It's still a 2 because of if you
what's Vegas? Vegas have the team total lines out yet?
I think it's at 6.5 right now for South Carolina.
Bears got 2 more games than Vegas has for South
I think
Carolina.
It's at 6.5 right now.
Putting a lot of pressure on your boy there, Bear. I'm giving him kind of
manageable. Listen, Lenore Sellers was the most improved quarterback in college football from week 1 to week 14. You and I both have agreed on that multiple times. I like what they brought in Rasul Faison at the right.
I think they're going to miss Rocket Sanders. That's my concern.
Sure. But I think that Faison's a pretty good player, over 1,100 yards last year at Utah State. I think that Mazeo Bennett and Nick Harbor, while both may end up not being wide receiver number ones, are really complementary to what their skill sets are. I love the addition of what they have in tight end to bring along with Michael Smith, the 4-star that came in last season. I think their offensive line, despite losing some talent, is still going to be really good with Josiah Thompson. I still like what they have in terms of an identity and the leaders on the defense. I think their schedule is also manageable. Yes, you have to go face off against an Alabama, and yes, you got to go face off against Clemson, but both of them come to you. You got to travel to Missouri. You get to welcome in Vanderbilt. You got to travel to LSU, but that's going to be a game to where you are salivating at the mouth, and it's one where I think you are kind of game planning as that being your upset of all upsets. I think 8 wins should be obtainable for a guy that constantly is hitting the over every single year. Like, that's the other thing, is that we've watched Shane Beamer do more with less in his first season. Not many people had extreme high hopes for this team, and they got to 9 wins. Like, so for me, it's a 2 because of if they don't make the playoffs, no harm, no foul. But if they just taken a giant step back offensively with the play calling because of Mike Shula's coming on in to replace Dow Loggins.
Yeah, think about it. You're essentially saying they're going to replicate what they did this last year.
I think that 8 wins could be plausible. I very much think it should, especially if the offense should take that next step forward in the passing attack. That's my belief, personally.
Yeah, I'm just not totally sold on the Mike Shula thing yet either.
Tennessee, they went to the playoffs last year, so it's possible.
I think he's at a 2.
You think 2?
I think Heupel's at a 2. Heupel's at that point now. We know he can win games. He's going to go win 8 to 10 games a year. It's never going to be worried if they're going to a bowl game. To me now, Josh Heupel, and I think Tennessee fans started to see it after the Ohio State game. There's a difference. And I don't know, maybe being not great for 17 years made you forget what elite looks like. Going to win these tough road games is where you separate yourself from an elite program and not elite program. Look at the Alabamas, look at the Georgias, look at the Ohio States. They go win those elite road games. That's the difference. Tennessee is still not to that point yet. They're not to that point to winning that. That's where I'm there. I want to see an improvement from a personnel standpoint, from a Nico standpoint. He's got to develop. Let's see how he looks in the second year. I still have some hope for him. They lost a decent bit on defense too. I mean, they'll have to replace some people. But me and you talked about it. Schedule. Very, very manageable.
It's in my opinion the most manageable schedule.
But it was manageable this year.
Yeah.
And I think Tennessee should be in the hunt for a playoff berth because of their schedule. And if Nico can improve just a little bit, because I do think, and again, I think it's only going to be fair, just like South Carolina, the defense is going to take a step back a little bit. I mean, it just has to, naturally. I mean, I don't think it's going to be the exact same as they were last year. That's okay. I mean, you can't implement that every year.
They're also going to be without Jermod McCoy to start the year.
I have my concerns there. So, but no, I would say 2. They're ready. I think these fans are ready to go win a big road game away from Neyland, obviously away from Neyland Stadium, but go win somewhere like in Gainesville, go win somewhere in Athens, go win somewhere in Tuscaloosa. You have 2 opportunities this year to do that.
I think it's a 3 because if you can make the college football playoff at a place like Knoxville, you know that you have you have the right coach. Like, I think that's the other thing that's really like frustrating is you have the right leader in command. You also know that you have some good identity pieces on your defense. You're recruiting at the level that you want. You're bringing in the right amount of talent. Now it's all about development. It's about development of your quarterback. It's about development of your offensive line. It's about making sure that you have prominent wide receivers taking that next step forward. The schedule's manageable. I like what they have in the run game to take some more pressure off of Nico. I want Nico to take another step forward. But now that I know that Nico, I think, and again, I've already said this, I think that Nico was one of the more improved players on that team from week 2 to week 13. Like when they went and they played against Georgia, I think that as many faults as he had, you can also blame the drops from the wide receivers. You can blame the inconsistencies in the offensive line, getting the blocks and pass pro. There was a lot of things that just didn't go their way down the stretch, that they didn't look like a complete team. Can you just look like a complete offense for 4 consistent quarters? And that's why it's a 3.
On the road?
On the road, at home, it doesn't matter. I just want to see you in games.
I've seen that under hype. Their 22 offense was really good. I'm going to give them that. I've seen them put together a good offense. Not on the road necessarily, but at home for sure.
I mean, with this team, with a Nico-led team, can you play 4 quarters of consistent offense? That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard.
I think this year will be – what are we saying about Josh Heupel at the end of this year if they go 8-4?
Still the right guy, but it's starting to get a question mark of what needs to change on the
offense. I think you lose a little bit of the fan base. I think a little bit of fan base to start – not lose, but you're going to have some people really question, hey, are we ever going to get to the – are we ever going to go really win a championship? I post it all the time on Twitter. Will Josh Heupel ever win a championship at Tennessee, either SEC or national? What do you think, Bear?
I say at least an SEC championship. I will say at least one. I just think that the talent, the resources, the NIL collective is just far too strong to where Tennessee will ever play second fiddle for their coach if he's underachieving. And I don't see it right now because of, again, 10 wins. You've proven that twice now. And honestly, if Hendon Hooker doesn't get hurt, maybe you end up closing out the year and getting to a more prominent victory, over Clemson. Who knows? Who knows what happens in that game? Honestly, who does? Texas?
Yeah, for Texas, 1. Sark's not. I think he's got one of the more trendy programs going up. Take away the Georgia monkey a little bit, but it's first year. We'll see. They get a chance to redeem that this year in Athens. Again, I like how he's involved in the NIL from the salary cap perspective. I like the overall program. Again, it's up there. Does Sark have some holes at times in play calling on game day? Sure. But again, all of these guys have holes. So I'm going to go 1, though. Love the direction of the program. Best it's been in a long time.
1. Yeah, I'd say probably maybe a 1.5 just because of, is Arch going to be the dude? And can we, for starters, also, and for all the Texas fans that are watching this right now, and by the way, we got a lot of you watching. So real quickly, make sure you like the video, hit the ring notification, and subscribe to the channel. We're not asking you to go ahead, so you have to go be a part of all the newsletters and whatnot. We're doing this so that way we know what you want, the viewers, every single time that we come on Mondays, Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Can you just let Arch be Arch? Just let Arch figure things out. They lost their 3 starting wide receivers. They lost their star tight end. They lost 4 starting offensive linemen. They lost one of the better running backs they had. It could take a little while before he actually ends up developing into the elite player that many of us believe he will be. But even still, you have one of the better defenses. You still have a manageable schedule. And I think that you have to watch as more players take that next step forward at wide receiver. Ryan Wingo being one. What do you get from DeAndre Moore? Can we see Trevor Gooseby have a better start at left tackle now as the full-time guy? It's little things like that. If Arch doesn't throw for 365 yards against Ohio State, it's not the end of the world. Just take a deep breath. Things will be fine. I still think that Texas is the team to beat right now in the SEC simply based off of what they brought in terms of their recruiting class. Number 1 recruiting class, and they have a lot of talent coming back. Texas A&M.
I'm just going to go 2 here for Elko. It's not hot. We got to see some improvements. They got enough weapons on offense this year. Big year for Colin Klein, I think. That's the guy you need to watch to see if he'll be back in 26. As much weapons as he's had in a long time. Really, the only weapon he had at K-State was Deuce Vaughn. But always going to be a solid defense. Lacked a little bit towards the back of the year. I think they get that fixed with Mike Elko. Still like the direction. I think it's a 2, though.
3.5. And it has nothing to do with Mike Elko. Mike Elko's not on the hot seat. He's not going anywhere after this year. To me, what I feel like right now, when it comes to this A&M squad, you once again have spent money in the transfer portal, and you've done a great job of building a solid recruiting class. And I really like what you have returning in terms of your offensive line. And honestly, as much as I want to be upset with how that defense looked last season, especially in that game against USC out in Las Vegas, one thing that we know about Mike Elko, you and I both know this, Dave, he is never going to put a defense that looks like that out there again, ever. He will never allow that to be his identity because it's his child. But do you think that Marcel Reed will take the next step forward? Because if you have the rest of the pieces there, I love the ground game. They have a perfect ground game and a good 1-2 combination in Lavian Moss and Reuben Owens. And then you throw Amari Daniels in as the change of pace guy. That's just another plug and play wow factor. I think the offensive line's really solid. I think that Colin Klein, the way that he wants to call plays, he can now because of what they've brought in terms of the run game. Can Marcel Reed win you games? Because he did with his legs last year. But how does that help when you land a Casey Concepcion? How does that help when you land a Mario Craver? How does that help when you're bringing in 4-star wide receivers that you think are going to be really, really good? And you can believe that they're going to develop because Holman Wiggins took the 4 horsemen of the Bam apocalypse and turned them into all first-round picks. So I think that it's a 3.5 because it's just like, if the quarterback is the reason why you're being held back, I constantly find myself saying with Texas A&M, yes, they're good, but. Yes, they're good, but. There's going to be plays that are simply designed for number 10 to be the guy. There's going to be plays that are implemented in this offense where he and Colin Klein should be speaking the same language. They should be on the one wavelength. And I want to believe that we can see at least one more step forward for a guy like Marcel Reed. I want to. But I'm having my doubts right now. So did you do enough to where you feel good about the rest of the quarterback room, just in case he isn't the guy? Do you feel good about this team and the direction it's going heading into a crucial year 3, I think, underneath Mike Elko? That's just my 2 cents on that. It is. Last team, Vanderbilt. Or do we have any more? Is it just Vanderbilt?
It's Vandy. I'm going to go 2 for Barkley and them. He's fine. I almost went 1, but I want to see not an exact fall year, but take advantage of this year with Diego Pavia coming back. He played at Vanderbilt guy. I think he does a good job fundraising, good football coach. I think a lot of trusted people in the football industry really respect his football mind there. I think he's the guy for the long haul, but until he leaves, potentially, maybe if he gets that good. But again, it's his alma mater. I feel like in today's time in college football, college athletics, you couldn't have a better guy than someone I think is polished, well-rounded, cerebral as a guy, and he's also played for you and as an alum, and you kind of have this perfect transfer portal mix right now. If they don't capitalize this year, watch out. I think Vanderbilt can start getting some NIL work in. They're not competing for the SEC, but I think they can start competing for bowl games regularly.
It should be moving forward 6-6. Every once in a blue moon, maybe a 7-5 or 8-4 season. That should be realistic for Clark Lee if he can win this year. Now, if he doesn't win this year, it's a whole different thing. But I go 2. Again, you have your starting quarterback back. He got the waiver done. Eli Stowers didn't enter the draft, so that was another massive win for a guy in Tim Beck who knows this offense. I like what they have returning at running back. I think their schedule is manageable. I think they can get a few more upset wins along the way. I think Pavia plays with like this passion that just says, I don't care if I have to be carried into the end zone on one leg. I'm going to beat you. Like, he just has this ferocious attitude of, I'm better than you, and I actually believe it. So it's like, can you continue that type of success going into next year? Like, for one weekend in, I don't know, mid-October, can Vanderbilt be ranked at 25 or 24? Like that's it. If we get that, you're doing things right. I think that you're doing a lot of good things for Vanderbilt. Because this was the team that we were talking about for years. 0-8, 0-8, 1-7 in conference play. Now you're looking at 3 wins. Now potentially 4 wins. That's wondrous compared to what we have thought about Vanderbilt for years on end.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you think? Who is facing the most pressure in 2025? Which team needs to have the biggest breakout year? And which coach is definitely on the hot seat? But before we move on, this episode of the Overtime Drive is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And when the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because FanDuel is your home for live NBA betting. So even if you miss the first few minutes of a game or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can make your picks from the first whistle until the final buzzer. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into same-game parlays for a shot at a bigger payout. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. And if you haven't joined FanDuel ahead of the SEC tournament, number 1, what are you doing? But number 2, customers can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you lay and win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today. That's FanDuel.com/SECU for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment count with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Disclaimer: must be 21 and present in select states, in Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, and 18+ in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit is required. Bonus issue with non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit helpline ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, Dave, let's move on. Which quarterback is going to be the most improved in 2025 in the SEC? Multiple names that we could go off of, multiple quarterbacks that I thought took the step in the right direction, but one dude at the end of the year that you believe is going to be better than advertised and certainly better than what they were during their first season as QB1.
I'm going to go a couple guys here. I've narrowed the list down to.
Okay.
I'm say your name right. Taylon Green, DJ Lagway, Garrett Nussmeier, Blake Shapen, Lenore Sellers, Nico Iamaleava, and Marcel Reed and Diego Pavia. I mean, I think Taylon Green could fall in this category. I think DJ Lagway could. I think Nussmeier will be so. That would be my guess to be your pick, Bear, if we were going here. You could see that too. I say that. I mean, it's a tough. You can make a case for a lot of things. I'm going to go DJ Lagway, though. And it's kind of surprising because it's like, man, you think he's going to be really good. I do. I think he's going to improve. He's going to take that next step and be one of the best quarterbacks in this league. I'm going to go with him again. I think Taylon Green could be a trendy pick. I don't know. I think he's going to miss a guy like Andrew Armstrong, and I think they lost a lot on their offensive line. So, again, I think it's going to be his surrounding players around him, the surrounding cast. It's like be able to lift him up. I'm going to go DJ Lagway. I don't know. I think Garrett Nussmeier kind of hit a ceiling. I think he is who he is at this point. He's an old enough guy. We've seen him. Blake Shapen, who knows, coming off an injury. I'm not going to say that. I think Lenore Sellers could definitely take a next step. That's why I think Mike Shula is intriguing. Nico, I mean, dude, I'm starting to get there. I'm saying it. I think since Alex Golesh left to go be the head coach at South Florida in 2022, the Tennessee offense development at the quarterback position has not been there. Still concerns me. Marcel Reed almost went with that, Bear, but I didn't. I got to see it before I can believe it. Then I think Diego Pavia, I mean, sure, he can improve, but I think he could go with a better answer. I'm going to go DJ Lagway.
I'm going to go Nico. And honestly, it came down to him and it came down to Marcel Reed. It did. I think that Marcel Reed now having better weapons or having more consistent weapons is going to do wonders for his career. But I look at Nico, and I want to believe that we're going to see similar results that we saw with Hendon Hooker. So when Hendon Hooker came on in, he was a really solid quarterback year one for Tennessee.
Except where you know he's not there. I just said it.
I know. But I want to believe that this is hypo. I do want to believe this is hypo. The other thing I want to believe is much like that season, they had a good run game. They didn't have an elite run game, but they did have quality wide receiver play from Brewer McCoy to at the very start of the year when they had Cedric Tillman and then Jalen Hyatt went on to win the Biletnikoff Award. I want to believe that we're going to see that next step forward for the supporting cast around him. With Brandon Staley, I want to see that Chris Brazzell steps on up as a quality number 2. I want to see with the tight ends, Miles Kitselman's back there. I think that Ethan Davis could be a really strong player. I like the run game with a 3-man set, so there's not a lot of pressure on just one dude to be the entirety of your offense. And then Mike Matthews. I've made this abundantly clear as many times as possible. I believe that Mike Matthews is a special talent. I believe that he is that one name that 2 or 3 years from now, when we watch him enter the first round of the NFL draft, and he is thanking everybody in his pathway, saying, yes, thank you for letting me sit for a full year. It was the best thing for me. He is going to be the most developed playmaker that we have seen in Tennessee history underneath Josh Heupel. That is my hope. And so if I can get that from him, and I can believe that Nico, fully comfortable running Josh Heupel's system, knowing the up-tempo, knowing the audibles to call it the line of scrimmage, knowing that he can continue that consistency of what we saw last year where he was delivering clean strikes even though he was under pressure. I truly think that we could be talking about 4,000 passing yards. I think we could be talking about a 30 touchdown season or 35 touchdown season. You add in the mobility factor of what he provides. Guy rushed for, what was it last season? 4 touchdowns, over 400 rushing yards. I think that we could see more of that success. And again, depending on what defenses he goes up against, that might also bode extremely well in his favors. It might inflate his numbers a little bit. And I think that once you start to feel like that you're playing at the best peak at your desired contact, you play with confidence. And confidence is just something that you have to gain over time. And I think that there were so many moments last year where it just felt like things were trending down, things weren't stable, there was no consistent process, where this year it can. And I think that all those things are still there. I have not given up on my Nico stock. And if you have, that's totally cool. Sell it to me. I'll gladly buy it at the all-time low. I think he is in for a massive year. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that might also be a hypo thing at this point.
Yeah, I'm not ready to sell it yet. I'm not ready to sell it yet. You're right. I want to see some improvement. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I think this is a big year for hyping the boys. Again, if you don't see much improvement from Nico, I think that's when you see some people start getting a little pissed off.
But it's also, again, it's more than that. It's does the offensive line still be really good, especially with David Sanders coming on in? How do you feel about the wide receiver?
No, but I think it is. It's not more than that. It's about Nico's development. I mean, obviously, he's got to get protected to play well. I mean, that's obvious. I'm just saying it is Nico.
But think about this for a second. What if it's a perfect pass downfield? Chris Brazzell, 50 yards. Nobody's even near him. Goes to his hand.
The receiver's got to catch the football.
That's what I'm saying. It's little things like that where it's like, okay, I still believe that's not on Nico. That's on the receiver. It's little things. But honestly, I just think that constantly it's another year in the system. I didn't want to doubt Hendon Hooker. I thought Hendon Hooker was one of the best quarterbacks of 2022 in college football. I think Nico could be that guy.
Let's see him against Georgia on that third game next year. That'll be a telltale right there.
The other one I want to throw out here, and I just thought it was a cop-out because we didn't get to see him play in the SEC, John Mateer. Does Mateer get better with Ben Arbuckle? Is it just now him being able to control the offense, being able to just make some audibles at the line of scrimmage, not afraid to tuck and run when the second or third read isn't there, pick up an extra 15 yards with his legs, slide, fresh set of downs, hit the reset? That to me was the other name I really want to include in there because I think that John Mateer, Dave, and I know it's a little facetious of me, I do. But I believe that he is the best transfer to come into the SEC this upcoming year. And I believe he is already a top 6 quarterback in the SEC for 2025.
No, I agree. I think John Mateer is the best quarterback in the portal.
Far and away, he was the best quarterback.
I know a lot of teams behind the scenes were really trying to come in late on that really liked him. So I think he's one of the best.
And if he can take that step forward the way that we didn't see Jackson Arnold do it, especially with still I would go underwhelming wide receiver room. Definitely not what Jackson Arnold's going to be working with down in Auburn. And he can trust that the run game is still there. It's very easy for me to see people start believing that John Mateer is the right type of culture fit. Now, I've already said this multiple times. The way he plays, it's not Baker Mayfield-esque, but what it is he carries himself with that Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts attitude. I'm QB1 for a reason. Stay out of my way and don't figure out why I'm going to have to beat your ass. That's the type of quarterback you need out in Norman, Oklahoma. That's my 2 cents on it.
No, I agree with you, Bear.
All right. Before we close on out, as we do the hypothetical question every single night, if you like this type of content, make sure that you leave us your hypothetical. And also, friendly reminder, when this show ends, make sure that you're following us on the social channels, Dave Shumate SEC, at Mr. Cole Thompson, at SEC Unfiltered. Mailbag Thursday. Get your questions in. Get them on Instagram. Get them in on Twitter. Get them in on our email, whatever you want to see fit. Questions galore for the mailbag on Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Dave, who are the bad boys of the 2010s in the SEC? Which team was the baddest of the bad in terms of you just didn't want to face them? You knew they were a gauntlet. You could already wave the white flag knowing that it was over. They were just filled to the brim with future NFL Sunday talent. They were better than you, and they let you know it by the first whistle. And by the time that you left the field, that you were beaten and bruised, and you just want to go ahead and cry home to your mom and dad. Who were the top 3 teams of the 2010s that just stood out? And the hypothetical that you would love to see play in a college football playoff tonight?
Who I did not like, Bear?
Yeah.
It's got to be 2010 Auburn came off. Again, I'm when somebody I was a student at the time. I don't know. It's just a team that came to mind, just a very unlikable team. Definitely takes home the cake for me. Cam Newton, the whole Cecil Newton getting paid. Now Auburn got the greatest deal ever. I mean, paid in $250,000. That literally is the greatest deal you ever could have gotten for Cam Newton. I mean, still the greatest college bargain of all time. We thought that was a lot of money back then. That's just an average ass receiver now. But no, it's got to be that team. I mean, they had some nasty chop blocking offensive lineman, Lee Zimba, and then the only guy I really liked on that team was like Philip Lutzenkirchen. That was the only guy I really liked on that team. So it's interesting. That would be the team that takes home the cake for me right off the bat, Bear.
For me, number one is 2019 LSU. And I know
you didn't like that team.
No, and the reason why is because I think that there's so okay. Well, let me explain. This is the Alabama in me that comes out. That team was so loaded with future NFL talent that I think sometimes we forget about how good that Alabama roster was. Like, and especially when you look at what Joe Burrow was able to accomplish marching on in, because he started off the year by beating Texas, and he took Texas belt to ass out in Austin in week 2. And then that was the moment where it's like, okay, now we got to pay more attention to what this LSU team is. Then they beat Alabama. When they beat Alabama, that to me felt like the last sign of any doubt that Burrow wasn't winning the Heisman and that LSU wasn't winning the national championship. And I felt like every other team that was ever going to go ahead and face off against him had to understand this is the reality. We're going to stink. We're going to lose. We're going to get our asses handed to us. And it just was so demoralizing. Like, as an Alabama fan, knowing how good we could have been that year, knowing how good that team was supposed to be, knowing how many talented future NFL players were eventually about ready to head off to the next stage of their career. And then remember that was the game where it was the very last moment of the Tua Tagovailoa era before eventually the following week he gets hurt against Mississippi State, and then he's out for the rest of the season. So it's like, it was little things like that that just drove me kind of nuts. Like, I knew that this was an impenetrable force. And the worst part was that they didn't have the number 1 defense. Like, they were so good offensively with Jamar Chase, with Justin Jefferson, with Joe Burrow, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and their defense was like top 40. Like, so Alabama should have been able to put belt to ass if they wanted to on that secondary.
Yeah, best defenders that year were probably Derek Stingley.
Yeah, Derek Stingley as a freshman. Grant Delpit was on that team. Patrick Queen was the starting middle linebacker. They had some decent defensive linemen, but like Delpit was like the big guy at the time, and then Derek Stingley Jr. was an All-American. Who's number 2?
I didn't really dislike that team. It was more of like a, damn, I respect them. They're really good.
Okay, it's a hatred out of respect. Like, that should have been out.
I didn't like the 2010 Auburn team. That was not a respect thing, but it's funny. I ended up working for the offensive coordinator of that team. But no, hell, imagine sitting in a team room having to listen to him and Cam talk about the damn thing. I'm just like, good God.
Well, that's number 3. Who's number 2? Or who's another one for you?
That's not number 3. It's number 1 for me.
Okay, who's number 2 for you? Because that was number 3 for me.
For number 2, again, I'm going back old school here, guys. More because when I worked in it, the fanhood kind of went away a little bit. So I don't dislike some of these teams. I know some of these recruits. I don't like probably 2011 LSU, because that was when I was in college. It felt like it was an LSU Alabama world then. First game of the century type vibes there. They played twice that year. Felt like you should have won the first game that year. I just didn't really like that LSU team that year. I thought Alabama was better for most of that year, but yeah, I like Tyrann Mathieu now. At that time for that season, I didn't. I more respect that team now. But back then, I didn't. The Auburn team stands alone by itself, though. 2015 Ole Miss. The 2015 Ole Miss team was probably the most infuriating team. You weren't a Chad Kelly guy?
No, that was a big thing. As I couldn't stand Chad Kelly. I couldn't stand him because of who's going to come on at number 1 for me. The catch by Quincy Adebayo on the double catch. Yeah. That to me was still the most infuriating moment as a fan, even though I was working at the time. You just realized Ole Miss is going to win this game. They're going to win this game in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Hugh Freeze is going to get 2 back-to-back victories over Nick Saban. That shouldn't happen. I thought their defense was fine, but I also thought that team was good enough to win a national championship. And then they let me down. Alabama ended up winning the national championship, which was good. But it's like a blemish on the radar. Like, you know, when it's like you feel like that your team should be known for a better season, and then eventually it's just like that was the one blip. That was the one thing that stopped from perfection for Nick Saban was Hugh Freeze, a decent defense, really, in my opinion, an overrated offensive line, but just great play calling, and Chad Kelly simply reincarnating the legend of Johnny Manziel from circa 2012 inside of Bryant-Denny Stadium. That to me was just a team that was so infuriating, and I don't think that anybody had an answer for them. It was like they had to have the self-inflicting wound for them to lose a game. They had to be the reason they lost. It was never that. It was never another team was putting belt to ass to them. They were internally having too many self-inflicted mistakes.
My final team here, Bear. And again, I went in the wrong order. So Auburn was 1. This LSU team was 2011 was 2. This is my 3rd one. Kind of going back and forth. Don't really dislike either one of these teams, honestly. But if I had to from 2010 on, it's either 2012 Texas A&M or 2016 Tennessee. For whatever reason, I was never Again, I've met him. I've dealt with him a few times. I like him a lot better now, Butch Jones. But then was not a big – but I felt like that team was just like lucky as hell, hitting the Hail Mary against Georgia in Kirby Smart's first year. Just didn't really think it was a great overall team. I don't know. They kind of annoyed me at times. Not a big hatred there, but if I had to come up with one more, I mustered up that one. You could throw 2012 A&M in there as honorable mention.
You didn't want to throw 2013 Auburn in there? Because that was the respect factor to me. That's the reason they're not on this list for me. Just the fact
I can see why they would be on it. I don't know. They didn't have any players I disliked on that team, really. Like, it could. I don't know. I mean, that's fair if someone wants to put them on there for sure.
What'd you say was your honorable mention?
Texas A&M 2012.
That's number one. That's number one. That's number one. Year one in the SEC. You get a quarterback who most people thought was supposed to be a defensive back. Most schools weren't even looking at him to play quarterback, or at least in the state of Texas. They said you got to move to safety. Comes on in. He marches into Bryant-Denny Stadium on a November afternoon. I watch as a ball is batted at the line of scrimmage, bounces into his hand, runs around, finds Ryan Swoop in the back of the end zone, 6 points. I'm sitting in the end zone. I'm 13 rows up, and the crowd goes silent. And Johnny Manziel single-handedly beat Alabama. Like, yes, the defense did its job, and yes, you had a couple of runs here and there, but Johnny Manziel beat Alabama. And as somebody that grew up in the city of Houston and would go to College Station on weekends and would hang out with his friends from high school on weekends, I had one friend, his name is Tyler Blanton. Tyler, if you're watching this, I'm telling the story now. He would introduce me as the guy that went to Alabama. And every single Aggie would go, hey, man, 29-24. Hey, man, 29-24. So I had to live in an offseason where so many Aggies were coming up to me and talking about how they marched in to Bryant-Denny Stadium in year one in the SEC, and it was a cakewalk. Keep in mind, that was the same year that Alabama marched its happy ass into the national championship after beating Georgia and put boot to ass against Notre Dame. But I had to hear for an entire offseason that 29-24, 29-24, and that has lingered in my brain for so long. It honestly has nothing to do with that team, but just hearing that for an entire summer whenever I would go out, any single time in College Station, any single time we'd go to the bar scene, it just got infuriating. It just got to the point of where I want to start punching people. Like, to me, that will be the single most hated team that I ever have had, just because of how the fan base added every single time that we ever went out drinking. That's the one that does it for me. It is.
No, yeah, I can see it. It'd been interesting to see what that team looked like if they'd have made the playoffs that year. If there were the playoffs.
If there was such a playoff, it honestly, if they would have won one other game and been in the SEC championship, I would have been very interested to see how Johnny Manziel would have taken on Aaron Murray. I think that would have been a really interesting dynamic on Mark Richt versus Kevin Sumlin for a shot at the national championship. That would have been really interesting, in my opinion. Really, and honestly, I don't know if Georgia would have. I'm not sure if A&M would have won, but I'll tell you what, Johnny Manziel would have put up a show. Yeah. And honestly, and the one thing I will say, and again, people think I hate A&M. I don't hate A&M. I don't hate any team in college football. But I think the only thing that I will say positive about that team is that Johnny Manziel not playing in an SEC championship may be one of the biggest tragedies that we have seen in college football over the last 2 decades. It genuinely, just to be able to have a shot of winning a conference title.
Well, to be fair, you had to think about how dominant Bama was at that point.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's not like he missed out on it. Like, he was just he was at the wrong time. If he was
I'm saying from like a fan perspective, as somebody that just would love to see a player like that. Because, like, think about it. Cam Newton played in one. Joe Burrow played in one. We never got to see Johnny do it. We never got to see one of the greatest quarterbacks of the 21st century play for a conference championship and a potential national championship. I think that's just it's a very somber moment as a college football fan that I would have loved to have seen, simply to say I was alive during that time to watch him play in Atlanta. That's it for me. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and then I would say, you could make the case the top 3 teams in the country that year were from the SEC: Alabama, Georgia, and A&M.
I think A&M not being in the top 5 at the end of the year was very infuriating, because if they definitely earned it with the Peach Bowl win, they 100% earned it.
12. No, they beat bad? K-State.
I think it was
Oklahoma. Oklahoma. They beat Oklahoma bad.
I say it was Oklahoma, and it was the Cotton Bowl. That's it.
The Cotton Bowl. Peach
No,
Bowl next year, they came back and beat Duke.
Duke in the Peach Bowl. That was it. That was the David Cutcliffe team. That
Correct.
was the really good David Cutcliffe team. I forget who was the quarterback. All right. Well, Dave, good show. That was a lot of fun.
There was, Bear. Another March 3rd one in the book.
Time flies when we do this stuff. Anyways, time also flies when you just go ahead and like the video. We know that you can like the video. There's over 650 people watching right now. So real quickly, make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification, and subscribe to the channel because we have content coming out every single day in college basketball, college baseball, college football. College football is back on our television screen starting literally in less than a month with the spring games. We have content galore. Make sure that also you are following us on the social channels because Dave Shumate, myself, and SEC Unfiltered are dropping the mailbag question as soon as we get off air. Answer. Ask us your questions. We go for a full hour. It is your show on Thursday nights. So get your questions in and we will answer literally anything. Doesn't have to be about college football. Can be about just any content that you want. Make sure that you're following us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at SEC Unfiltered, at Dave Shumate SEC, at Mr. Cole Thompson. And check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Have a wonderful Monday night. Have a wonderful start to the rest of your week. And remember, you only live once. Don't take it too seriously. Bye.